The train whistle screamed across Clearwater Station like a wounded animal. Grace Porter stood on the platform, her small trunk at her feet, watching families embrace in the golden October light. Steam hissed from the locomotive. Children laughed. Women wept into their husbands' shoulders. She felt nothing but the cold wind cutting through her worn traveling dress. Her ticket to Silver Creek felt heavy in her gloved hand. A one-way passage to obligation. To a merchant who'd bought her father's gambling debts and decided a wife came with the payment. "Ma'am." The voice was rough, urgent. Grace turned. A man blocked the sun tall, trail-worn, maybe 35. His hat shadowed eyes that looked like they hadn't seen rest in months. Dust covered his expensive clothes. His hands trembled at his sides. "Please come with me," he said. No introduction. No apology. "My twins need a mother." The platform went silent. Grace's heart stopped. He continued quickly, desperately. "My wife died 8 months ago. The boys won't speak, won't eat properly. I've tried everything." His voice cracked. "I can pay you, protect you, give you a home. They need someone who'll stay." Grace stared at him, at the naked desperation in his face, at the way his jaw trembled when he mentioned his sons. "I know how this looks," he said. "But out here, we don't have time for proper courtship. We have need, raw need, and I'm asking." The train conductor called final boarding. Grace looked at her ticket, looked at this stranger, looked at the train that would carry her to a lifetime of cold duty. "How long?" she whispered. "As long as you can bear it?" A woman beside them gasped. The audacity. Grace handed the stranger her trunk. 6 months, she said, her voice steadier than her hands. "As your housekeeper. Not—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Not anything else. Relief broke across his face like dawn. "Yes. Thank you. God. Thank you." The train pulled away. Grace watched her old life disappear into steam and distance. "Wyatt Cole," the man said, finally offering his hand. "Grace Porter." His grip was warm, calloused, trembling with exhaustion. "I have a wagon," he said. "It's a 2-hour ride to the ranch." Grace nodded, picked up her carpet bag, followed this desperate stranger into an uncertain future. Behind them, the platform erupted in whispers. The wagon wheels ground through dust and sage. Mountains rose purple in the distance. The afternoon sun slanted lower, colder. Grace sat stiffly beside Wyatt Cole, hands folded in her lap. He hadn't spoken since they left town. His knuckles were white on the reins. "The boys," he finally said. "Finn and Jasper, they're 4 years old, twins." He swallowed hard. "They haven't spoken since their mother died. The ranch hands good men. All of them, they call them the ghosts. Because they're silent. Because they drift through the house like they're already gone." Grace said nothing. "Let him talk. They wake screaming every night. Both of them. I go to them. But—" His voice broke. "I don't know what to say, how to comfort them. I'm their father, and I can't—" "You're doing your best," Grace said quietly. "My best killed their mother." The words hung between them like a noose. Grace turned to look at him. Really look. Saw the shadows under his eyes, the way his shoulders curved inward like he was trying to disappear. "How did she die?" Grace asked. "Childbirth. During a blizzard. I insisted on a home birth. Too proud to risk the journey to town, to face their judgment." His jaw clenched. "She bled to death in our bed while I held her hand and prayed. The boys were born healthy. She died an hour later." Grace felt the weight of his guilt like a physical thing. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. It was my fault." They rode in silence for a long moment. The wind carried the scent of sage and coming winter. "Why were you on that train?" Wyatt asked. Grace stiffened. "Does it matter?" You agreed to come with a stranger, to raise his children. That takes courage or desperation. He glanced at her. I'm guessing both. She looked at her hands, at the calluses from her father's laundry business, the one he'd gambled away piece by piece. A merchant in Silver Creek held my father's debts, she said. $3,000. My father drank himself into that hole over 2 years. The merchant offered a bargain, marry him, and the debt disappears. You were buying your father's freedom with your own. Yes. Wyatt nodded slowly. Then maybe we're both running from something, or towards something, Grace said. He looked at her with something like hope. They crested a ridge as the sun touched the horizon. Below them, a sprawling ranch spread across the valley corrals. Barns, a large house with dark windows. Cole Ranch, Wyatt said. 3,000 acres, cattle, horses, timber rights, worth a fortune. His voice turned bitter. None of it could save her. Grace studied the house. Beautiful, isolated, lonely as a grave. The town. Wyatt continued. They already buried my wife with their prayers and casseroles. Now they'll bury me with talk. You need to know people will judge you. Harshly. Let them, Grace said. Wyatt almost smiled. You're braver than I am. No, just tired of other people's opinions. They descended toward the ranch as twilight swallowed the valley. The front door swung open to reveal a cold, silent house. Grace stepped inside, and her breath caught. The house was grand hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, expensive furniture, but it felt abandoned. Dust covered the mantel. Children's toys lay scattered like wreckage. No curtains on the windows, no warmth anywhere. A house, not a home. Mr. Cole. An older man appeared from the kitchen, 60-something, weathered face, kind eyes. You brought her. Grace Porter. Wyatt said. Grace, this is Mr. Hatch, my foreman. Mr. Hatch studied her with the careful assessment of a man who'd seen too many things go wrong. The boys, Wyatt asked, in their room, won't come down for supper. Wyatt's shoulders sagged. May I see them? Grace asked. Both men looked at her. They don't, Wyatt started. I know, Grace said gently. May I try? Wyatt nodded. Led her upstairs. The boys' room was at the end of the hall. Wyatt knocked softly, pushed the door open. 2 small figures sat on separate beds, backs to the door. Identical dark hair, thin shoulders, bare feet. One clutched a wooden horse. The other stared at the wall. Grace's heart broke. She walked slowly into the room, knelt between the beds. Neither boy looked at her. Hello, she said softly. My name is Grace. Silence. I came a long way today. From a train station. Your papa asked me to come help. The boy with the wooden horse, Finn. She guessed turned his head slightly. His eyes were huge, haunted. I lost my mama when I was small too, Grace continued, her voice steady despite the tears in her throat. When I was 6 years old, she got sick, and one morning she was just gone. She took a slow breath. It's the worst pain in the world, and nobody can fix it, not even papas who try very hard. Jasper, the other twin, turned his head now, looked at her with eyes too old for his small face. I'm not here to replace your mama, Grace said. Nobody could do that. I'm just here to help. To be here if you need someone. If that's all right with you. Finn's hand tightened on the wooden horse. Grace stood slowly. I'll be downstairs if you need anything. Or if you just want someone to sit with you. She turned to leave. Stopped. Your mama must have loved you very much. She said, to fight so hard to bring you into this world. She left the room, found Wyatt standing in the hallway, tears streaming down his face. That night, Grace unpacked in the small room off the kitchen. She could hear the house settling, wind rattling windows, and then screaming. Both boys, wailing in terror from their nightmares. Heavy footsteps above, Wyatt's voice, helpless and broken. Shh, boys, Papa's here. You're safe. But the screaming continued. Grace climbed the stairs, pushed open the door. Wyatt stood between the beds, hands hovering uselessly. The boys thrashed, unseeing. Grace moved past him, sat on the floor between the beds, reached out slowly, carefully, and placed one hand on each small back. She began to hum. A lullaby her own mother had sung. Hush, little darling. The stars stand guard. Close your eyes gently. Sleep won't be hard. The screaming quieted. The boys' breathing slowed. Grace kept humming, kept her hands steady and warm on their small backs. Finn turned toward her, curled into his pillow. Jasper's hand crept out from under his blanket, found the edge of Grace's skirt, gripped it. She kept humming until both boys slept. When she finally looked up, Wyatt was watching from the doorway. His face was raw, grateful, destroyed. Thank you, he mouthed. Grace nodded, carefully extracted herself, followed him downstairs, in the kitchen. Wyatt poured 2 cups of coffee with shaking hands. They haven't slept through a night since he couldn't finish. They will again, Grace said. It takes time, he looked at her. Why did you really get on that train to marry that merchant? Grace wrapped her hands around the warm cup. My father loves whiskey more than he loves me. Has for years. The merchant, Mr. Garrett, he's 53 years old. Cold. He told me I'd bear him sons and keep his house and never embarrass him in public. She met Wyatt's eyes. I was 48 hours from a lifetime sentence when you appeared. And maybe Providence sent me to that station. Wyatt said quietly. Or desperation. Grace said, maybe they're the same thing. On the mantel, Grace noticed a framed photograph. A beautiful young woman with kind eyes and dark hair. Wyatt's wife. The ghost in this house. Grace looked away, finished her coffee, said goodnight, in her small room. She lay awake listening to the silence above. The boys slept. For the first time in 8 months, according to Mr. Hatch's whispered comment, they slept. Grace closed her eyes, wondered what she'd agreed to, wondered if she'd have the strength to leave in 6 months, wondered if she'd want to. 3 weeks passed like water wearing stone. Grace woke before dawn every day, started the stove, made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. When Wyatt came down, always exhausted, always grateful she had breakfast ready. The boys appeared slowly. Finn first, cautious, then Jasper, always 3 steps behind his brother. Grace taught them their letters by lamplight, read to them from the books gathering dust in the parlor, taught them to knead bread, to gather eggs, to recognize the tracks of deer and rabbits in the frost. Finn began speaking, single words at first. Yes, no, please. Then phrases. May I have more? Grace, look. Jasper remained silent, but he shadowed Grace everywhere. His small hand found hers during walks. His eyes tracked her across rooms like she might disappear. Wyatt watched all of this with something like wonder. He taught Grace to ride, to shoot. The land doesn't forgive mistakes, he said, steadying her hands on the rifle. Neither do wolves. She learned quickly, proved herself capable. They fell into a rhythm. Dawn chores, midday lessons, evening meals, quiet hours by the fire. Grace noticed things. The way Wyatt's hands stopped trembling. The way Finn actually laughed when Mr. Hatch showed him how to rope a fence post. The way Jasper hummed Grace's lullaby to himself. Healing. Slow and painful as a wound closing. But the town noticed too. The supply run to Clearwater came 4 weeks after Grace's arrival. She rode beside Wyatt in the wagon, the boys bundled in blankets behind them. The moment they entered town, the whispers started. Women turned away, pulled their children close. Grace heard the words clearly, shameless. That poor woman barely cold in her grave. What kind of father? Wyatt's jaw clenched. He helped Grace down from the wagon like she was made of glass. Inside the general store, the silence was crushing. Mrs. Patterson, the owner's wife, served them with tight lips and cold eyes. Outside, Sheriff Dutch appeared, 50-something, ambitious eyes. Politician's smile. Cole, he said, word around town is you've got yourself a housekeeper. I do, Wyatt said evenly. She got papers, references. She's got employment. That's all the law requires. The sheriff's smile turned sharp. People are asking questions. You two married proper? Or is this some kind of arrangement? Wyatt stepped forward. My private business is exactly that. Private. Not when it involves children, the sheriff said. Not when folks worry about their moral welfare. He glanced at Grace. No offense, ma'am, but you can understand the concern. Unmarried woman, alone with a widower and his boys. Looks bad. Grace felt heat rise to her face, not shame, anger. Those boys are thriving, she said quietly. For the first time in months, if the town's morality is more concerned with appearances than with children's happiness, then the town has forgotten what morality means. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. Careful, ma'am. You're new here? You don't know how things work? I know bullies when I see them, Grace said. Wyatt took her arm gently. We're done here. They loaded supplies in silence. The boys sensed the tension, pressed close to Grace. On the ride home, Wyatt finally spoke. I'm sorry. I should have warned you better. It's not your fault. It is. He glanced at her. There's something you should know. My wife's parents, the Harrisons, they live in St. Louis. Railroad money. They've been making noise about custody. Grace's blood went cold. They want the boys. They want my land. The railroad's expanding west. My property sits right in their planned route. His hands tightened on the reins. If they can prove I'm unfit, they get guardianship, which means they control everything until the boys come of age. And a woman living in your house unmarried gives them ammunition. Wyatt finished. I brought you into danger. I'm sorry. Grace looked back at the twins, bundled together, Jasper's head on Finn's shoulder. Then we don't give them ammunition, she said firmly. That night, Grace found legal papers in Wyatt's study. A petition for emergency custody evaluation. Dated 2 weeks ago, the storm was coming. The first heavy snow fell in mid-November. Grace woke to a world transformed white. Silent. Beautiful. The boys pressed their faces to the window, breath fogging glass. Can we go outside? Finn asked, his voice still tentative, still testing if the world would answer kindly. Bundle up, Grace said. They built a snowman in the yard. Finn found stones for eyes. Jasper carefully placed a carrot nose. Grace wrapped her old scarf around its neck. From the barn, Wyatt watched. Jasper's laugh, bright and pure, carried across the frozen air. Wyatt's chest tightened. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard that sound. That evening, the boys fell asleep early, exhausted and happy. Grace sat by the fire, mending one of Finn's shirts. Wyatt poured 2 cups of coffee, sat across from her. They're different, he said. Since you came. His voice caught. They're alive again. Grace's needle paused. They were always alive, just hurting. I couldn't reach them. I tried everything. You loved them, Grace said gently. That's not nothing. Wyatt stared into his cup. I need to tell you something. About the day my wife died. Grace set down her mending. Listened. It was January, a blizzard. She went into labor 3 weeks early. I wanted to take her to town, to the doctor, but she refused. Said she wanted her babies born at home, in our bed, like her mother before her. His voice went rough. I should have insisted, should have thrown her in the wagon and driven through the storm. But I was proud. Stubborn. I thought I could handle anything. He looked at Grace, eyes devastated. She bled. Wouldn't stop bleeding. The boys came quickly, too quickly. Healthy, perfect. But he couldn't finish. I held her hand while she died, promising I'd take care of them, that I'd be enough. You are enough, Grace whispered. I can't cook worth a damn. Can't comfort them when they scream. Can't sing lullabies or teach them gentleness. Can't, his voice broke. I killed her with my pride, Grace, and now I'm failing them too. Grace stood, crossed to him. Knelt beside his chair. Grief is lying to you, she said fiercely. Your wife chose you, chose this life, chose to bring those boys into this world. She didn't die because of your pride. She died because childbirth is dangerous and random and cruel. But if I'd stop. Grace took his hands. Blaming yourself won't honor her. Living well, raising those boys with love and strength that honors her. Wyatt looked at their joined hands. At this woman who'd appeared like Grace itself when he'd been drowning. Why did you agree? He asked. At the station. Why did you say yes? Grace smiled sadly. Because I saw a man brave enough to ask for help. And because I was tired of running from the things I needed. What did you need? Purpose. Belonging. A reason to get up in the morning that wasn't just survival. Their eyes met. Held. Wyatt almost leaned forward. Almost closed the distance. Almost Grace stood quickly. It's late. I should... Yes, of course. She fled to her room, heart pounding. Later that night, Jasper woke crying. Grace went to him. Found Wyatt already there. Together. They sat on either side of the small bed. Jasper reached for Grace's hand, then Wyatt's. Held them both. Tell me about Mama, he whispered. First words in months. Wyatt's voice shook. She was kind, strong. She loved you more than anything in this world. Does she see us? Jasper asked. Every day, Grace said softly. Every single day. Jasper looked at her. Are you going to leave? Grace's throat closed. Not unless you want me to. I want you to stay forever. Wyatt's hand tightened on hers. Then I'll stay as long as I can. Grace said, it wasn't a promise, but it was close enough. The marshal arrived at dawn. Grace was making breakfast when she heard horses. Wyatt moved to the window, went rigid. Stay inside, he said. But Grace followed him onto the porch. Mr. Hatch appeared from the barn, rifle casual in his hands. Sheriff Dutch dismounted, followed by a federal marshal and a finely dressed couple in their 60s. The woman wore furs. The man wore cold eyes. Mr. Cole, the sheriff said, this is Marshal Graves, and Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. They've filed an emergency petition for custody of your sons. The world tilted. Mrs. Harrison stepped forward, voice dripping false sympathy. Wyatt, dear, we know you're struggling. Losing our daughter was devastating for all of us. But these boys, our grandsons, deserve stability. Proper education, a moral environment. They have that here, Wyatt said, voice dangerous. Mr. Harrison's gaze swept to Grace. With an unmarried woman of questionable character. Watch your mouth, Wyatt growled. The marshal held up a hand. We have a court order. Temporary custody pending a hearing. The boys come with us until the judge can evaluate the situation. No. Wyatt moved forward. Mr. Hatch stepped beside him. Don't make this difficult, the marshal said, not unkindly. From inside, Finn's voice. Papa. Grace turned. Both boys stood in the doorway, eyes wide with terror. Mrs. Harrison moved toward them. Come, darlings. We're taking you to a nice hotel, with hot baths and suites and... No. Finn screamed, ran to Wyatt, wrapped himself around his father's legs. Jasper ran to Grace. She picked him up, held him tight. This is cruelty, Grace said, voice shaking. Can't you see they're terrified? We see a father who's allowed his home to fall into chaos. Mr. Harrison said coldly, who's employed a woman with no references, no family, no, I have references, Grace said. From every family in Topeka whose laundry I took in for 6 years. From the church where I taught Sunday school. From, can you produce them? The marshal asked. Grace's heart sank. All her references were in Topeka, 3 weeks right away. The hearing is in 1 week, the marshal said. Until then, the boys stay with their grandparents at the Clearwater Hotel. That's the judge's order. Wyatt looked at Grace. His eyes were wild with helplessness. It's temporary, she said firmly. For the boys. For him. For herself. 1 week, then we get them back. But Jasper was screaming now, clinging to her neck. Finn fought as the marshal gently pried him from Wyatt's legs. I want Grace, Finn wailed. Papa, don't let them take us. Wyatt fell to his knees. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'll fix this. I promise. The boys were placed in the Harrison carriage. Their screams echoed across the valley long after the dust settled. Grace and Wyatt stood alone in the yard. Then Wyatt turned, walked to the barn, slammed the door. Grace heard him breaking, heard the animal sound of a man destroyed. She went to him, found him on the floor, head in his hands, shoulders heaving. She sat beside him, said nothing, just stayed. 3 days passed. Wyatt slept in the barn, stopped speaking, stopped eating. Grace tried everything. Mr. Hatch tried, nothing reached him. On the 4th day, Grace rode to town alone. She bribed the hotel clerk, a young man with sympathetic eyes, with $2. He let her slip upstairs. The Harrison suite was lavish. Grace knocked softly. A sour-faced woman in a nanny's uniform opened the door. You're not allowed. Grace pushed past her. The boys sat on a velvet settee, dressed in stiff new clothes. Finn had a bruise on his cheek. Jasper rocked silently, eyes vacant. What happened? Grace demanded. He fell, the nanny said quickly. Finn's eyes said otherwise. Grace knelt, touched his face gently. I'm going to get you out of here. I promise. When? Finn whispered. Soon. The Harrisons appeared. Mrs. Harrison's face twisted. How dare you? How dare you? Grace said, standing. These boys are traumatized. Finn is bruised. Jasper won't speak. Is this your idea of a proper environment? They're adjusting, Mr. Harrison said coldly. Children need discipline. They need love, Grace said. Something you clearly don't understand. She left before they could call security. That night, she found Wyatt in the barn, drunk for the first time since she'd known him. His wife's photograph lay beside an empty bottle. I can't do this, he slurred. I can't trap you the way I trapped her. Can't ask you to fight battles that aren't yours. Grace grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. Listen to me, she said fiercely. Your wife wasn't trapped. She loved you. And those boys need both of us. Not one of us drowning in guilt. Both of us fighting. What if I fail again? Then we fail together, but we don't quit on them. Wyatt stared at her. Why do you care this much? Because Grace's voice broke. Because I love them. Because I love... She stopped. But the truth hung between them like lightning. The barn door opened. Mr. Hatch entered. Urgent. If you want those boys back, he said, you better marry. Tonight. Judge won't split a legal family. Grace's heart stopped. Wyatt looked at her. Really looked. Will you marry me? His voice raw, honest. Not because it's convenient, not because we have to, but because I can't imagine my life, their lives without you in it. Because somewhere between the station and here, you became the center of everything that matters. Grace's eyes filled. Yes. They married at midnight. Mr. Hatch as witness. No music. No flowers. Just vows spoken in the kitchen by lamplight when Mr. Hatch pronounced them married. Wyatt kissed Grace's forehead, gentle, reverent. Thank you, he whispered, for saying yes. Again. Grace smiled through tears. Ask me tomorrow. I'll say yes again. They had 3 days until the hearing. 3 days to save their family. The courthouse was packed. Word had spread the wealthy Harrisons versus the grieving rancher. Half the town came to watch. Grace sat beside Wyatt, the simple gold band heavy on her finger. They'd married in secret, told no one but Mr. Hatch. Now the truth would come out. Judge Carter, 70 years old and weathered as old leather, called the hearing to order. The Harrison lawyer spoke first, painted Wyatt as mentally unstable, haunted by grief. Painted Grace as an opportunist with no references, no family, questionable morals. He produced witnesses. Mrs. Patterson from the general store. She came to town dressed immodestly. No wedding ring. Another townsperson, clearly paid. The boys looked thin, neglected. Grace's hands clenched. Wyatt's jaw was stone. Then it was their turn. Wyatt stood, walked to the witness stand. I was broken, he said simply. When my wife died, I wanted to die too. But I had 2 sons who needed me. And I was failing them. Completely. The courtroom was silent. Grace Porter appeared at a train station when I was at my lowest. I made a desperate, foolish request. And she, his voice caught. She said yes, not for money, not for security, but because she saw 2 children in pain and couldn't walk away. He looked at Grace. She saved us, all 3 of us. She taught my boys to speak again, to laugh again, to believe the world could be gentle. She taught me. He stopped, gathered himself. She taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's love. Mrs. Harrison scoffed. Convenient timing for a marriage. We married 3 days ago, Wyatt said. But I wanted to marry her 6 weeks ago. I was just too broken to see I deserved a second chance. Grace was called next. She described Finn's first words, Jasper's first laugh, the nightmare's ending. The joy slowly returning to a house that had felt like a tomb. Those boys are loved, she said firmly. They're fed, educated, comforted. They have a father who would die for them. And now they have me too. The Harrison lawyer stood. Mrs. Cole, if that's even your legal name yet, what qualifies you to raise children? You have no education. No references present. No, oh, I have love, Grace interrupted. And patience. And the knowledge of what it means to grow up without a mother. Those boys don't need etiquette lessons. They need someone who will hold them when they cry and celebrate when they laugh, someone who sees them. And I do. Judge Carter held up a hand. The boys. Bring them in. The courtroom stirred. Finn and Jasper entered, holding hands, still wearing the stiff clothes the Harrisons had bought. Finn's bruise had faded but was still visible. The judge knelt to their level. Finn, he said gently, who do you want to live with? Finn's chin trembled. He looked at his grandparents, cold and tall. Then at Wyatt and Grace. "Papa and Grace," he whispered. "Please. And you. Jasper." Jasper hadn't spoken in days. Grace held her breath. The boy looked at her. Then, clear as a bell, "Don't take us away from home." The courtroom erupted. Judge Carter stood, held up his hand for silence. Mr. Hatch rose from his seat. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The judge nodded. "I've known Wyatt Cole 20 years, Mr. Hatch said. Watched him build that ranch from dust and determination. His wife, God rest her, was a saint. And this woman," he gestured to Grace, "she honors that memory by loving those boys like they're her own. If that's not a proper family, then I don't know what is." One of the ranch hands stood. Then another. The school teacher. The doctor who delivered the twins. Silent testimony. Judge Carter looked at the Harrisons. "Why do you really want these boys?" Mr. Harrison's face flushed. "They're our blood." "You have railroad expansion planned through Cole's property," the judge said flatly. "Guardian rights would give you control of that land until the boys come of age. Don't insult my intelligence." Mrs. Harrison stood. "Those boys deserve better than a father who loves them and a woman who saved them." The judge's voice was sharp. "Sit down." He turned to Wyatt and Grace. "These boys stay with Mr. and Mrs. Cole. Custody challenge dismissed. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, take your ambitions elsewhere." The gavel struck. Finn and Jasper ran to Wyatt and Grace. The four of them collapsed into each other. Crying. Whole. The courtroom erupted in applause from some. Outrage from others. Grace didn't care. She held Jasper close, felt Wyatt's arm around her shoulders, heard Finn's relieved sobs. "We're going home." Wyatt whispered, "All of us." Outside, Sheriff Dutch approached, hat in hand. "Mrs. Cole. Mr. Cole." He cleared his throat. "I was wrong about you folks, and I'm sorry." Grace nodded. Forgiveness given, not forgotten. They rode home as the sun set. The boys sandwiched between them, chattering. Alive. Grace looked at Wyatt. He looked at her. No words needed. They were a family now, legal and real. Spring came gently to Cole Ranch. Grace woke to bird song and warm light streaming through the kitchen window. She made coffee, started breakfast, listened to the house waking around her. Footsteps on the stairs. Finn appeared first, sleep-rumpled and smiling. "Morning, Grace." "Morning, sweetheart." Jasper followed, carrying the wooden horse. "Can we plant flowers today?" "After your lessons," Grace said. "But yes." Wyatt entered, kissed the top of her head in passing. A gesture so natural now it felt like breathing. 4 months since the hearing, 4 months of slow, steady healing. The garden had been Grace's idea. Vegetables and wildflowers both. The boys helped dig, plant, water. Finn chattering constantly. Jasper humming Grace's lullaby. Yesterday, Grace had found the photograph of Wyatt's first wife in a drawer. She'd taken it to the boys' room, placed it on the dresser with fresh wildflowers. "Your mama," she'd told them. "She's part of this family, too. Always." Finn had touched the frame gently. "She's pretty." "She was beautiful," Grace had said, "and she loved you so much." Now, after breakfast, they worked in the garden. The earth was dark and rich. Seeds were promises of future blooms. Wyatt watched from the porch, coffee in hand. This woman who'd appeared like a miracle and stayed like a blessing. Mr. Hatch joined him. "You got lucky." "I got Grace," Wyatt said softly. That evening, after the boys were asleep, Grace and Wyatt sat on the porch. The stars were brilliant. The spring air smelled of new growth. I don't deserve you, Wyatt said quietly. Grace took his hand. Stop measuring. Just be here. I am. He squeezed her fingers. I finally am. A knock at the door surprised them both. Sheriff Dutch stood there, hat in hand again. Sorry to disturb. Just wanted to say the town council met. We'd like to apologize, formally, for how we treated Mrs. Cole. He looked at Grace. You're a good woman. We were wrong. Grace nodded. Apology accepted. After he left, Wyatt pulled Grace close. You changed everything, he said. This ranch, those boys, me. We changed each other, Grace corrected. He kissed her then, not desperate or urgent. Just grateful and sure inside. A child called out, Grace, Papa. They went together, found Finn awake. Not from nightmare, but from a dream. I dreamed about Mama, he said. She was smiling. She said she's happy, we're happy. Grace's eyes filled. Wyatt's throat closed. Then we'll keep being happy. Grace said, for her and for us. Finn smiled, went back to sleep. The next morning, the four of them ate breakfast together. Finn asked questions about everything. Jasper carefully set the table, precise and proud. Grace poured coffee. Wyatt passed the bread, his hand brushing hers. Through the window. The garden was beginning to bloom. Small green shoots pushing through dark earth. Life, stubborn and beautiful, returning. Mr. Hatch arrived for the day's work. Morning, family. Morning, they chorused. Grace watched them all, this found family. This impossible gift, and felt peace settle in her bones. She'd boarded a train to escape a cold future. Instead, she'd found a desperate man at a station and said yes to an uncertain present. That yes had become everything. Wyatt caught her eye across the table, smiled. The shadows were gone from his face now. Just love and gratitude remained. Outside, the land stretched endlessly, no longer isolating, just full of promise. Finn tugged Grace's sleeve. Tell the story again, about the train station. Grace laughed. Again, it's my favorite, Jasper said softly. So Grace told it. About a man brave enough to ask for help. About a woman tired enough to say yes. About two boys who needed love and found it. About a family built from desperation and hope and the simple courage to show up. When she finished, Wyatt added quietly, and they lived happily. Finn interrupted. Loudly, Jasper corrected. Grinning. Gratefully, Grace said. Together. Wyatt finished, and they did. Outside. The spring wind carried the scent of wildflowers and new beginnings. Inside, the house that had been a tomb was now a home. And Grace Porter Cole, no longer running, no longer alone, finally understood what it meant to belong. The end.